Hello everyone, welcome back to the IMS Get Set Law YouTube channel. Today we will be looking at the quantitative techniques from CLAT 2025. Last year there were two passages. There were 6 questions in each passage. Today we will look at each of the passages and also what are the shortcuts and few tricks which can help you get the answers quickly. Last year both the passages were based on percentages. So let's start. The first passage. According to the estimates of World Inequality Report 2022, in India, men earn 82% of the labor income, whereas women earn 18% of it. A woman agriculture field laborer makes rupees 88 per day lesser compared to the male counterpart. According to the Ministry of Agriculture, while a man is paid 383 on average, woman makes 294 per day. Now the gap is not constant, the gap changes from state to state. Important thing that the gap of this daily wages is more than the cost of 2 kgs of rice. In Kerala, the field laborers make the most money. Men get 789, women get 537. While this is the highest amount paid to a women laborer in a state, it is also 252 less compared to the male counterpart. As of 2020-2021, Tamil Nadu has the highest gender wage gap among agriculture field laborers at 112%. It is followed by Goa at 61% and then Kerala. The wage gap is the lowest in Jharkhand and Gujarat, 6% each. But the women laborers in this particular states make rupees 239 and 247 respectively. Men earn more than women across all the different forms of work. The gap is greatest for the self-employed. In 2023, male self-employed workers earned 2.8 times that of women. In contrast, male regular wage workers earn 24% more than women and male casual workers earned 48% more. The gender gap in earnings is still persistent, but there are differences in the trends. The gender gap has increased for self-employed workers while falling for the regular wage workers. Male regular wage workers earned 34% more than women from 2019 to 2022, with the gap falling to 24% in 2023. Now, when we look at this passage, there is too many data points. There are two different tables which can be created. One can be between men and women for different kind of earnings such as laborers, self-earning, regular wage. Then we can have another table which can be for the states, and in that what a male agricultural laborer and a female agricultural laborer is earning. Now, to capture two tables, create this, enter the data, it will take too much time. So, for such a passage, it is recommended that you directly get into the question. Based on the question, whatever information they are asking, you come back to the passage and solve it. That said, let's start with the first question. If the wages paid to men working in agricultural sector in Goa is 335 on average, what is the amount of wages paid to women in the region? Okay, now this is one of those questions which was withdrawn after the Supreme Court involvement before the results were declared. Now, why is there a problem with this particular question? We know that men in Goa are getting 335. As per the passage, we know that in Goa, the gap was 61%. But here comes the problem. We don't know whether females were 61% of men or whether men were 61% more than female. Based on this, you can have two different answers. So let us say if females were 61% of men. So we have 335. 10% will give us 33.5. 60% will be into 6. So 6 times. So we will have 0, 3. So 21, 1, then 2 carry over. So 20 and a decimal. So 201. And then again 1%, it is easy. It will be 3.35. So approximately you get 204. That is one of the ways to calculate this, which can be your option A. Now, if some students consider that men is getting 61% more than female, so that time we can say that 335 is equal to 161 upon 100 into female. That time female will earn 335 into 100 upon 161. Now again approximately you can write this as 335 into 100 upon 160. You cancel out the zeros. 5, 8. Then if we multiply this by 5, we get the value as 51675, and if you divide this by 8, you get a answer which will not match any of these options. So going with that, your answer can also be none of this. Since in the passage it was not specified whether females are 61% of the male or whether males are 61% more than female for this gap, this question was withdrawn. Now let us look at the next question. Again, this particular question was again cancelled because it is based on the previous question. Since you did not have a correct answer for that question, even this question was wrong. In this question, there was another fault. The problem is they were asking us that which of the following state offers the least wages to the female. Now, if you carefully go through the entire passage, for every state we know the value except for Kerala, where we don't know what is the gap. We don't know how much a male is earning. We don't know how much a female is earning. And if you look at the options, since the value for Kerala is unknown, you cannot definitely mark this answer. None of the option is given as cannot be determined. And hence again, this was a wrong question and later withdrawn after the Supreme Court involvement. Now, let's look at the next question. In 2013, if average annual income of a female self-employed worker was 250, how much will a male self-employed worker make? Now, if we have some retention of the passage, the self-employed workers were mentioned in the second passage. In the second paragraph, the clear sentence says that male self-employed workers should be 2.8 times of female. So if females were 250, males will be into 2.8. Now again, the tricks to calculate this quickly: 250 into 28 upon 10, you cancel out the 0. 25 into 28, you can write it as 25 into 25 plus 3. Now for any of the competitive examinations, if you want to ace the quant section, if you want to be very quick with your calculations, you need to know your tables till 30. You need to know your squares till 30. You also need to memorize the reciprocals so you can calculate percentages quickly. Now, if you have memorized it, 25 square is 625 plus 25 into 3 is 75. Quickly, you can mark your answer as 700 and move forward. Knowing your tables, your squares, your reciprocals will increase your speed and it will give you an opportunity to mark more than few questions which you normally mark in your mocks. Now, coming to the next question. If a female casual worker earns rupees 200 per hour, what is hourly wage of the male casual worker given that the male casual worker earns 48% more than female? Now, this is a particular question where you don't even need to go back to the passage because whatever data is required for solving is present in the question itself. We know that female is 200, male should be 48% more than female. How do we calculate it quickly? 1% will be 2, so 48% will be 96. So male will be nothing but 200 plus 96, 296. In 3 lines, you have your answer. Very basic, very easy and quick calculation. Now, coming to the next question. Assume that in 2022, the earnings gap between the male and the female self-employed workers was 2.5 times. In 2023, the gap increased to 2.8 times. What is the percentage increase in the earnings gap for the self-employed workers from 2022 to 2023? Now, again, when we look at this particular question, we don't need to go back to the passage because they are asking us a percentage change, and whatever values we need to refer to get the percentage change are available in the question. In 2022, the gap was 2.5. In 2023, the gap was 2.8. We know that a percentage change is calculated as difference upon the reference value into 100. The difference between the two is 0.3. We are comparing 2023 to 2022, so my reference value will become 2.5 and we'll multiply this by 100. Again, because it is 0.3, 2.5, you can write this as 3 upon 25 into 100. 25 ones are 4s are 3 into 4 gives you 12%, which is your option A. Again, a very straightforward sum, a very easy sum. Also, it is a sum which is not based on any data in the passage. So, even if you read this question, you can solve it without going into the entire passage. Now, let us look at the last question from this particular passage. Which of the following statement is correct? The wage cap of Goa and Kerala state is less than Tamil Nadu. Now, if you remember, in this passage, they said that when it comes to Tamil Nadu has the highest gender wage gap amongst the agricultural field laborers at 112%. Now, since Tamil Nadu has the highest gap, the first statement will be true that it will be Goa and Kerala will be less than Tamil Nadu. The second statement, the wage gap of Tamil Nadu is greater than Jharkhand and Gujarat. Again, we know that Tamil Nadu has the highest gap, so it will be more than Jharkhand and Gujarat. So, hence both A and B are correct. So, your answer is option C. Whenever you are solving such a question, and if you have an option which is mentioning both A and B, always be careful to check both the options instead of just looking at option A, marking it in your OMR sheet. You don't get retakes in your OMR. You cannot change your answer once you have marked it. So whenever you have such an option, be extremely careful before you move forward with solving such a passage. Again, the major learnings from this passage is that when you have too many data points, making a table, making a flowchart or creating a diagram may take too much time, and if you realize, for most of the questions, half of the data points were never utilized. Hence, writing those data points, capturing it will not increase your speed but will slow you down in the paper. So whenever you have such a set, get into the questions. Based on the questions, whatever is asked, go back to the passage, take that number and solve it. In this passage, we have Mr. Das, who is working for a construction company. He has a family which includes his wife and a daughter. His total monthly income includes a salary of rupees 9,228, and he also gets an additional 10% house rent allowance. Due to the increasing inflation, he is keeping a home budget that accounts for the income and the expenses of the household. Out of his total monthly income, he spends 25% on food expenses, 18% on paying the house rent, 9% on entertainment, 23% on the education of his child, 13% on medical expenses, and he saved 12% of his total monthly income. Now, when you read this passage, I am pretty sure all the IMS students should quickly get this passage, get the familiarity, recognize that you have solved so many passages similar to this in your class exercises or percentages caselets, in your practice exercises, as well as in your SimClats. This was supposed to be a very easy passage in the last year's paper. And for such a passage, again, the trick is to always create a flowchart so that you know the percentages for different buckets. And once you have that flowchart ready, you don't need to come back to the passage ever again, and you can keep on solving each and every question. Now, in this passage, there was just one small trap where students can make a mistake, where his income is not just rupees 9,228, but he also gets 10% more in form of the house rent allowance. So, his total income is 9,228 plus 10% of this. Now, because there is no zero, you cannot discard it. So, whenever there is a zero missing, instead of removing the zero, we add a decimal point. So, the 10% of 9,228 becomes 9,922.8, and hence his total income will become. Now, the trick to quickly add is to look at the numbers in pieces instead of looking the entire number as a whole. In 9,228, if you add 2, what will you get? 30. In 30, if you add 20, what do you get? 50. Now, 9,200. In that, if you add 900, what do you get? 10,100. And we also have 50. So, hence, the value becomes 10150, which is 10,150.8. But again, for solving purposes, we will take this value to be 10150. If there is a question where all the options are very close and we need to have precise calculation to get our answer, then we will consider 0.8 to get it. But if there are options where there is a difference of more than 50 or 100 between the options, you don't need to sit and precisely calculate till 0.8. You can take this approximation to get this answer. After this, let us look at the flow chart. We have the total income of 10150 divided in 6 different buckets. The first bucket is for his food expense, which was 25% of the total. Then the next bucket which we have is for paying his house rent, which is 18% of the total. Then we have entertainment contributing to 9% of the total income. Then we have the education expense, which is 23% of the entire expense. Then we have medical expenses, which accounts for 13% of the total. And then finally, we have the savings of 12%. Now, when you have such a flowchart available, the next step is not to actually calculate the percentages and get all the precise value. We have the buckets. Based on the question, whatever they ask, we will start calculating, and then once we have the data available, if it is needed in any other future question, we can refer. But now wasting the time to calculate all 6 values precisely does not help, because there can be a chances where one particular bucket is never used in any of the question. So that said, let's come to the first question of this particular passage. How much money is Mr. Das paying in terms of his house rent? Now, for this question, we know that house rent is 18% of the total, which is 10,150. the best way to calculate 18% is actually doing 20% minus 2%. Why? Because we know that 10% of 10,150 is simply 1015. You just need to ignore the zero here. If you know 10%, you also know 20% quickly, which should be double. The double of 1000 is 2000. The double of 15 is 30. So it becomes 2030. If I know 20%, we can quickly calculate 2%, where from 20% just ignore the last zero. So your 2% becomes 203. Now because 18% is 20% minus 2%, the value of 18% becomes 2000 minus 200 gives us 1800. 30 minus 3 gives us 27, which is 1827, which is your option A. Again, if you carefully look at the options, there are options which are differing by more than 100, and hence even if you are not taking precisely 10150.8, you will get your answer, you will save time, and you can get it under a minute in the paper. Now, let's look at the next question. Mr. Das gets 12% annual interest on the savings. He wishes to save rupees 30,000 in 2 years. So we can say that every year he wishes to save 15,000 rupees. How much extra should he save so that he can meet this target? Now, if you look at the options, we have 1200, 1300, 1400, but then we also have an option where there is no need for saving. So for such a question, let's start on yearly basis with 1 year and make sure that the salary which is given to us, you are careful that it is monthly, but the interest is annual. So we will convert the monthly saving into annual by multiplying by 12 and then calculate the values. First step, getting the monthly saving. Again 12%, similar to previous question, we will break it down as 10% and 2%. 10% is 1015. 2%, you don't need to sit and precisely calculate. You know it from the last question, which is 203. So your 12% will become 1218. But this is the monthly saving. So what will be your annual saving? 1218 into 12. If you ask me, the best way to look at it is 1218 into 10 plus 2. Because anything into 10, you know the value should be 12180. Into 2, or basically doing double. The double of 1200 is 2400. The double of 18 is 36. So you are adding 2436. Now if you add this, your yearly saving is 1, then again 6, then we will have 4 and 1. So we have 14616 as your yearly saving. But on this, you're also getting a 12% annual return or interest. So again, the 10% of 14616 will become 1461.6. Now if you just stop for a minute here, 14616 is the money which you already have saved. On that, you are getting bare minimum by taking 10%, 1461. In 14616, if you just add 1000, you are getting more than 15,000. For achieving the target of 30,000 in 2 years, per year you only need 15. Already you are saving more than 15,000, which means that to reach our goal of saving 30,000, we don't need to save any extra money, and hence the answer for this question becomes option D. Now let's look at the third question. Which of the following is true regarding the home budget of Mr. Das? Whenever you're solving such questions, go with the options. The total amount spent on house rent, entertainment and education is greater than total amount spent on food expense, medical and saving. Now for this particular question, you actually don't need the precise value for each of the buckets because we know the percentages and they are based out of the same total. So just even looking at the percentages is more than enough to get an answer. For option A, house rent is 18%, entertainment is 9, so total becomes 27, education is 23, so it becomes 50. So the first three things is giving you 50%, which means that the remaining three buckets should also be 50. Let's verify. 25 plus 13 gives us 38 plus 12 gives us 50. So this word greater than is wrong and hence A cannot be the answer because they are asking us to find the true statement. Total amount spent on entertainment, medical expense and education. Entertainment is 9, medical expense is 13, so total 22. Education is 23, so it gives us 55. And since it is 55, the remaining has to be 45, so it cannot be equal. So even B is wrong. You don't even need to calculate and check for the next one in exam scenario. C, the total amount spent on savings, which is 12, medical expenses, which is 13, so we have 25, and education, which is 23 more, so 25 plus 23 gives us 48%. Since these three buckets are 48, the remaining has to be 52%, which means that these three buckets are less than. Now let's just verify that whether the remaining is 52. House rent 18, food 25, together you get 25 plus 18 as 43, plus entertainment 9, 43 plus 9 52. It's perfect and this is true, so your answer becomes option C. Next one, how much money remains for other expenses after the house rent and savings are exhausted? House rent is 18%, saving is 12%. So between house rent and saving, 30% of the money is spent. So how much are we left with? 70%. Again, we know that 10% of 10150 is 1015. So 70% will be 7 times. 7 times of 1000. 7000 plus, if you know your tables well, 7 times of 15 is 105. So the value becomes 7105. The closest option which we have here is 7106. Why is there this slight difference of 1? Because we have not considered 10150.8. But again, if you look at all other options, the difference is of more than 40 or 50 or even 100 or 500, and hence this answer of having 7105 is more than sufficient to get the correct answer and get marks in your paper. Let us look at the next question. If the expenditure on the food and entertainment is increased by 10% due to inflation in prices, what will be the new percentage of savings in monthly salary? Now, our salary is not increasing. The expense is increasing because of inflation, which means that if expenses for some buckets increase, the savings will come down. Now, let us see how much are we spending on food and entertainment before inflation. Food is 25, entertainment is 9, so total we were already spending 34%. Now because of inflation, you are spending 10% more on this. 10% of 34% will be 3.4%. Now 3.4% will be spent extra on food and entertainment. So this 3.4% will be reduced from your savings. So you were saving 12%, but now you will save minus 3.4%. Again, 12 minus 3, go step by step. 12 minus 3 is 9. 9 minus 0.4 gives us 8.6%, which is your option B. Again, for this particular question, you are not expected to calculate the integer values because everything is in terms of percentage, and just solving based on percentages will give you the correct answer. Let us look at the next question. How much total money has he spent on food and entertainment? Food and entertainment together is 34%. 25 plus 9. Now again, we will not solve the entire 34% together. We will break it down as 30%. Because we would know 30%, we can quickly get 3%, and even getting 1% is easy. The first step of calculating 30% smartly. We know that 10% will be 1015. So 30% should be 3 times. So 3 times of 1000, 3000. 3 times of 15, 45. So 3045. Because we know 30%, in 3%, either we need to ignore a 0, or if there is no 0 to ignore, we add a decimal. So it will become 304.5. 1%. Again, we know 10% is 1015. So 1% becomes 101.5. Now if you add all of these things, again very easy additions, 3000, 300, 400, 45, 49, 50, and 0.5 gives us 1, so 51. So we have 3451. If you look at the options, 3541 cannot be, it is differing by a lot. 3461, it looks close, but again there is a difference of 10, and even if you consider that 0.8, it is not possible to get that high of a difference, so it is wrong. 3371 cannot be, and hence answer is none of the above. Again, in the paper, there are chances that you will mistake 3451 for 3461, but because there is none of the above option available, you need to mark that as your answer. Instead of none of the above, if you had some number, let us say 3281, then the closest option by approximation will come to 3461. So just be careful about such sums in paper. Again, the second caselet or the second passage in your CLAT set, depending which set you had. So in set A, the first set was extremely lengthy. The second passage was based on these percentages, which was easy. In some other set, the first passage was this percentages, and the second passage was the tedious data points passage based on that income inequality. Now, if you are in your paper, if you have set A, where this is your second caselet, I would advise to read both the caselets and start with the easier one. Solve all 6, because easy calculations, precise answers, you can get them, and then get into a difficult passage. I hope this was a useful video. Make sure you are subscribing to our YouTube channel so that you are continuously updated with such informative videos. Thank you so much for watching.